Good morning. My name is Edgar Rodriguez. I am a civil engineer and a professor at the University of Piura in Peru. Currently, I am studying a Master in Science program in Civil Engineering at the University of Texas at El Paso. The paper I'm going to present is titled Expected Academic Performance in a Lower Level Undergraduate Structural Course. The co-author of this work is my mentor, Gerardo Chang, also professor at the University of Piura. This is the outline of my presentation. I will start with an introduction, then I will describe the analysis performed and the results obtained, and finally I will present the conclusions and make a discussion about the findings. 1. Introduction. The structural field of civil engineering is usually considered by undergraduate students as the hardest discipline. Statics is the first structural course of the field. Each semester, a group of students enrolled in statics at the University of Piura experience learning issues, generating negative attitudes and anxiety to later courses. To improve this situation, it is necessary to identify those students so they can receive more attention from their professors and achieve satisfactory academic results. This identification requires a prediction. This paper is aimed to study the academic performance expected from 369 students enrolled in statics for the first time during 4 semesters, fall 2012, spring and fall 2013, and spring 2014. 2 performance indicators were analyzed, one prior to the course start, the cumulative index, and the other during the early course weeks, the initial course performance. 2. Analysis of expected academic performance based on cumulative index. The cumulative index is a parameter equivalent to the grade point average, GPA. It's an academic index that measures the student performance throughout his career. The cumulative index was correlated to the statics reformulated final grade. A simple linear regression model was used due to its low complexity and easy replicability. The relation between the cumulative index and the reformulated final grade is shown in this graph for fall 2012. The equation of the regression line represents the expected performance calculation based on cumulative index. The graphs for all the semesters are shown. A positive linear correlation between the cumulative index and the expected performance is observed. In second semester's graphs, the regression lines fit data more appropriately, that is, less dispersion than compared to first semester's graphs. This graph shows the highly fitted simple regression lines obtained with equations displayed in the previous slide. These equations show the expected performance in terms of cumulative index. There is a similarity between the lines corresponding to the second semesters as well as the lines corresponding to those of first semesters. All the graphs show a differential behavior between the semesters, both in data dispersion and regression equations. These differences could result from various factors, some associated to the semester under study and others to the student. 3. Analysis of expected performance based on course performance. The initial course performance is an indicator that represents the student's initial academic performance for the course first unit's topics. The initial course performance was correlated to the statics reformulated final grade. A simple linear regression model was used. The relation between the initial course performance and the reformulated final grade is shown in the graph for spring 2013. The equation of the regression line represents the expected performance calculation based on initial course performance. The graphs for all the semesters are shown. A positive linear correlation between the initial course performance and the expected performance is observed. In second semester's graphs, the regression lines fit data more appropriately, that is, less dispersion compared to first semester's graphs. This behavior is similar to the observed when cumulative index is related to the reformulated final grade. This graph shows the highly fitted simple regression lines obtained with equations displayed in the previous slide. These equations show the expected performance in terms of the initial course performance. Lines are not the same, but there is a similarity between the lines corresponding to the first semesters as well as the lines corresponding to those of second semesters. The graphs show a differentiated behavior between semesters, not only in data dispersion but also in regression equations. Therefore, the semester should be considered a variable in the performance prediction. 4. Analysis of variations between reformulated final grade and expected academic performance. The graph shows variations between reformulated final grade and expected performance based on cumulative index, and variations between reformulated final grade and expected performance based on initial course performance. The x-axis represents the difference between reformulated final grade and expected performance in terms of cumulative index, and the y-axis represents the difference between reformulated final grade and expected performance in terms of initial course performance. These differences measure the precision of the estimation. 9 zones with similar academic behavior have been defined, setting boundary lines which correspond to differences equal to ±1. Student percentage for each zone is indicated. Similar graphs were made for the other semesters. Conclusions. The cumulative index and the initial course performance are correlated with the reformulated final grade. However, the dispersion levels obtained with both indicators are not good enough to make a prediction. Results show a differentiated behavior when comparing first and second semesters. However, during each semester, the expected performance show similar behaviors. This conclusion is supported on 2 analyses, using cumulative index and initial course performance as performance indicators. Therefore, the academic semester should be considered a variable in the performance prediction. The analysis of expected academic performance allows to identify common behaviors in students taking the course. 4 groups have been defined. Group 1 students whose final grade could be predicted based on the cumulative index or initial course performance. These students are characterized by presenting a consistent academic performance. That is, the initial performances in the course correspond to its cumulative index. This feature is what would be expected to make good predictions and be able to identify students requiring assistance. However, this group does not exceed a quarter of the sample in each semester. Group 2 students whose cumulative index predict performances close to the final grade. However, initial results don't establish performances close to the final grades. These are students whose initial performances in the course do not correspond to what is expected of them based on the cumulative index. Their initially expected performance is affected by some factors that act on a temporary basis, but then stop to influence their academic performance. These are students whose final grades are consistent with the cumulative index, regardless of what their initial performance is. Group 3 students whose cumulative index does not predict performances close to the final grade, but initial results establish performances close to the final grade. If the final grade is higher than the expected performance based on cumulative index, those would be students with good academic status who not necessarily always obtain good grades in previous courses, or students who have taken actions to achieve favorable academic results. If the final grade is lower than the expected performance based on cumulative index, those would be students who have obtained good grades in courses that do not develop the competences required for statics, or students who have had personal issues. Group 3 are students whose final grades are not the expected based on the cumulative index, but are consistent with their initial course performance. Group 4 students who are not easy to predict by any of the two performance indicators. This is a significant group, around half of students per semester. This rate would give an idea about the limitation of the prediction. That is, there would not be a significant number of students whose final performance could be reasonably predicted based on analyzed variables. As a consequence, the ability to identify students requiring assistance would be affected. The academic performance of students in this group would be influenced by non-academic factors such as stress, demotivation, personal issues, and health problems, among others. Discussion. Although clustering is only possible at the end of the course, this classification serves to guide a more detailed investigation about the causes that would be the origin of the behavior of each student group. Particularly, Group 4 would be interesting to analyze, since the performance of this group is sensitive to non-academic factors. This study will help overcome the difficulties in predicting academic performance and, as a consequence, will facilitate the identification of students requiring assistance. That was all my presentation. Thank you very much.